He had the power to control elections. He destroyed lives with a single email. And then he disappeared. This is the true story of a man who built an empire of lies and found redemption in the place he least expected.
He knew how to sell any lie. He knew exactly which words would land on morning talk shows, which phrases would go viral on Twitter, and what to whisper into a president's ear to push an agenda through Congress. He wasn't a face on the screen. He was the voice in the shadows. Only those in closed-door circles knew his name, but his signature sat on documents that rewrote laws, erased tradition, and redefined the very fabric of what America was. And if you think ideas like programmable digital currency or mandatory gender identity education in elementary schools are wild conspiracy theories, you've clearly never been in the rooms he sat in. These things weren't jokes. They weren't theories. They were strategy, a plan for total control. He came to Washington as an idealist, young, sharp, devouring books on sociology and political theory. He truly believed the world could be changed. But it didn't take long to see that the world doesn't shift by persuasion. It moves through fear, money, and manipulation. He was noticed, groomed, brought into the core of the machine shaping progressive America. Then came Biden, the perfect front, soft-spoken, forgetful, grandfatherly. Meanwhile, the real architects behind the scenes, his advisors, his team, were building something far darker. They called it equity, but it was enslavement. Policies that banned parents from speaking truth to their children. Education systems where gender became a spectrum and Christianity was labeled hate speech. Programs saturated in ideology. And he was the one writing the blueprints. He penned the manifestos read by press secretaries, crafted the rhetoric that poisoned the nation's veins with a smile. And he knew exactly why he was doing it. He destroyed lives, and he was proud of it. Whenever someone truly good stepped up, a Christian senator, a principled mayor, a God-fearing congressman, he tore them down. One Republican from Virginia tried to push a bill to defend traditional families. Within a week, the media was flooded with a fabricated scandal, a fake affair invented by his team. Another candidate, a former pastor, was smeared with a false mistress. 48 hours later, his reputation was ash. One more tried to block radical LGBT programs in schools. They planted a scandal so toxic, it tore apart his marriage and cost him custody of his kids. He executed it coldly, no remorse. He told himself, if they believe in God, they're a threat. He blackmailed journalists, threatened businessmen, crushed companies that resisted the agenda using IRS audits and targeted boycotts. He ruined marriages, doctored scandals, dug up dirt, and fabricated stories. In political circles, he was a legend. People feared him. They called him the party's hammer. This wasn't just warfare. It was art. And he took pleasure in it, watching lives crumble at the press of a button. One CEO refused to sign a DEI pledge, and within a week was hit with a discrimination lawsuit that cost him a $200 million contract. A school principal who supported a student's pro-family speech was fired after an old video surfaced, selectively edited by his team. He watched people break, watched them lose everything, and it thrilled him. It made him feel godlike, addicted to that rush of absolute control. The true goal was never freedom. It was deconstruction, to weaken, to mold every person into a pliable, confused mass. No roots, no faith, no meaning. Where the only truth came from a screen. Where kids trusted TikTok over their parents. Where truth became subjective and sin was rebranded as liberation. Because a population like that, you don't need to fight it. It begs for control. He knew this, and he made the deal anyway, because in exchange, he got power. Not the kind with cameras and applause. Real power, the kind that shapes minds. He could launch a meme, and 3 days later, CNN would echo it on air. He could push a draft policy, and by next week it would be common sense. He knew every lever, and he pulled them. At first, for the cause, then for the money, and finally, just because he could. Because nothing felt better than having the entire nation on a leash. His ties to BlackRock weren't official, but they were constant. Money flowed through nonprofits, civil society grants, social impact funds. In Africa, they threatened to pull investments unless nations adopted LGBT laws. In Latin America, they funded gender ideology training centers. He sat in closed-door meetings planning how to weaponize ESG and DEI against tradition. He read internal memos calling Christianity the final obstacle. They meant it. He didn't just believe in this. He lived for it. He was in demand. Private flights, invitation-only retreats, praise from think tanks. They called him a genius. And he felt untouchable. A king in a country where God had been evicted. He mocked prayer, laughed at churches, saw faith as weakness. And most of all, he believed he was better, above the masses. One of the few who truly knew how the world worked. And while he thought he was building an empire, his home was already on fire. His wife stopped speaking to him. His son withdrew completely. He tried to patch it with gifts, new phones, trips, game consoles. But the darkness in his son's eyes kept growing. Then one day, he came home to silence. Too much silence. His wife stood in the hallway, eyes dry, phone in her hand. She pointed to their son's room. He was gone. No note, just a laptop left open on a video of a teenage boy whispering, "I don't know who I am anymore. I just want it all to stop." He didn't scream. He just sat. The world collapsed around him. And the people he'd built it with? Silence. No one called. No flowers. No condolences. Just a cold message from a former colleague. Thoughts and prayers. An hour later, his access to internal servers was revoked. His name scrubbed. Just like that. He was toxic. An inconvenience. He disappeared. Fled to Nevada. Lived in a cheap motel. Drank himself senseless. Stared at the ceiling, wondering how best to vanish. One night, he looped a belt around a pipe, climbed onto the bed, and just as he stepped off, the belt snapped. He hit the floor. And then, the light. Not a hallucination. Not a bulb. Warm, blinding light. And in it, a man. No judgment. No wrath. Just eyes filled with love. And a voice that said, "I'm still calling you." He cried. Not from pain. From hope. For the first time in years, he felt something real. Not a contract. Not a strategy. Love. Unconditional and terrifying. Now he lives in a small town. Doesn't share the name. Keeps things quiet. But he's already given anonymous interviews to The Federalist, Daily Wire, and Epoch Times. Those reports, combined with leaked emails and insider testimony, cracked open his story. He exposed how the whole thing was structured, who funded it, who signed off. He showed it wasn't a movement, it was machinery, designed, engineered, with one goal: dismantle the old moral order. He told them, I saw the documents. I sat in the meetings. Christianity wasn't an inconvenience. It was the enemy. His identity remains protected, his face hidden. But the truth? It's out there. Because truth doesn't die just because it's buried. He's no longer a strategist, no longer a handler of power. He's just a man who met the truth. And now he walks with it, not on stages, but on his knees. I was a builder of lies, he says. Now I'm a witness to the light. But getting to those words wasn't instant. Even after the vision, even after those words, I'm still calling you. Chaos reigned inside him. He didn't wake up transformed. He woke up broken. And that, he later realized, was exactly where God wanted him. Because broken ground is the only place seeds can grow, he didn't know what to do, who to trust, where to go. All he knew was that the life he had was gone. He started with Scripture. At first, it repulsed him. Every verse felt like a spotlight, every sentence a verdict. But the more he read, the more the pages stopped accusing him and started showing him who he truly was. Not the architect of narratives, just a lost son. He read, he wept, he yelled at God, "Why didn't you stop me? Where were you?" And then, one dawn, still in that dusty motel parking lot, he looked up and said, "I don't know how to live. If you're real, take me. I'm yours. I've got nothing else." A few days later, he found a church. Small, no signs, no live streams, no polish, just people. Real people. A guy with drywall under his fingernails. A grandmother who smelled like laundry detergent. The pastor, calloused hands, quiet strength. When he first walked in, pale, thin, trembling, the pastor just looked at him and said, "You're not alone. We've been praying for you." He didn't know how the pastor knew, but he did, and that was enough. That same week, he sat down and confessed, not theatrically, not with some grand performance, just truth, raw and brutal. He told the pastor everything, the lies, the campaigns, the lives he'd broken, his son, the belt, the light, the voice. The pastor didn't flinch. He didn't interrupt. He placed a firm hand on his shoulder and said, "That's blood. That's sin. But there's a blood stronger, and it still flows." He started coming back, Sundays, then midweek, then to help, stacking chairs, mopping floors, unloading food boxes. He didn't care about being seen anymore. He just wanted to serve, to breathe, to feel useful without manipulation. He started journaling, just thoughts, prayers, then stories. One day, the pastor read something he wrote and said, "You should speak, not as the man you were, as the man God saved." He didn't look for a stage. But when the Federalist dropped a new report exposing the gender ideology push in elementary schools, something in him stirred. He knew the names, the signatures, the backdoor meetings, and he knew if he stayed silent, he'd be complicit. So he wrote an email. No name, no threats, just, "I was inside. I know how it was built. I'm ready to talk, off record." They responded in hours. The story ran. Then came a second outlet, then a third, each one digging deeper, matching his information to public records, documents, statements. The picture started to form, and it was uglier than anyone thought. But he stayed invisible. No face, no credit, just truth. The pastor told him, "Let them hear the truth. Let them not know your name. You were known for lies. Stay unnamed for truth." And he did. He kept sweeping church floors, kept showing up to prayer, led a quiet group of broken men who, just like him, were crawling their way back to grace. He didn't teach. He listened. because he knew sometimes a man doesn't need a sermon. Sometimes he just needs to know someone else survived. He no longer prayed for purpose. He prayed for mercy. He no longer demanded signs. He whispered thanks. He knew he didn't earn a second chance, but he lived because Jesus died, and that was enough. If you asked him why he shared it all, he'd say, because maybe someone else is standing where I stood, belt in hand, soul in pieces, and maybe they'll hear this, and they'll stop. Maybe they'll hear, I'm still calling you. And that voice, it might save them too. This isn't the end. It's the start of a different life. In this new life, he's not a name, not a ghost of politics past, not a redemption story. He's a forgiven sinner. And to him, that title is worth more than every accolade he ever chased. But the world didn't forget, and not everyone stayed quiet. When the first reports dropped, his name wasn't mentioned. But those who used to walk the halls with him, they knew. Press secretaries, political strategists, lawyers, they started getting nervous. The calls began. Then came the threats. If you speak, we'll bury you in your past. He said nothing. Then came the reporters, not the independent ones, the big names, the ones he used to feed stories to. They asked for a sit-down, on camera, full exposure. He declined. So they dug, and they found him. One day, a photo of his front porch landed in his inbox. No message. Just 4 words written across it. You picked your side. He showed the photo to his pastor. The man didn't blink, just handed him a torn scrap of paper with Psalm 27 verse 1 scribbled in pen. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? He didn't respond to anyone. That Sunday, he showed up to church in jeans and a wrinkled button-down, walked to the front, looked out at the room, and simply said, I was part of the darkness. Now I walk in the light. If the tide turns against me, so be it. If even one person finds truth through this, it was worth it. A week later, one of the networks aired a hit piece, full of half-truths, twisted details, edited footage. They painted him as a madman, a religious extremist, a manipulator seeking attention, but the comments section told a different story. If this is real, it explains everything. I know who he is. He prayed with me when no one else would. They tried to bury him, but something stronger started growing in the dirt. He realized fear had left. But that didn't mean the danger had. A few weeks later, after an early morning prayer breakfast, he was driving home along a quiet stretch of highway. A black SUV swerved from the shoulder, tried to run him off the road. He veered, hit a barrier, totaled the car. No suspects, no charges. Just a line in the report. Mechanical failure suspected. He didn't believe it. 2 days later, someone left a photo at his doorstep. An old press shot from his glory days. Him in a suit, smiling. Scrawled across it, "You won't resurrect twice." He stared at it for a long time, longer than he expected. His hands were shaking. His legs felt hollow. He walked into church that night. Same pastor, same calm. You know, the pastor said, truth always has a cost, but eternity pays better. He upgraded the locks, installed cameras, moved his recovery group to a safer location, took every reasonable precaution, but he didn't hide. Instead, he stepped in even deeper. He showed up more, prayed louder, served harder, and every time fear pressed against his chest, every time the dark outside felt too quiet, he whispered one verse under his breath. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And somehow, his voice, even behind anonymity, grew louder. Because now he wasn't speaking for a party. He wasn't spinning narratives. He was testifying. And testimony cuts deeper than spin. He received emails, quiet ones, men and women who used to sit beside him in meetings. "Is it really true?" they asked. "Did you really find peace?" One of them, his former protege, a man he once trained to dismantle reputations with a smile, spotted him in a grocery store. "You're out of your mind," the man snapped. "You betrayed everything we built. For what? Church pews and fairy tales?" He didn't argue, just looked him in the eyes and said, "I didn't betray anyone. I just stopped lying." Another came later, someone from the old war room, a guy who helped write attack scripts and rig press cycles. He sent a single message: "I haven't slept in 2 years. Can we talk?" They met at a park. No phones, no fanfare. 2 hours later, they stood and hugged like brothers. Now that man volunteers at a shelter and runs media literacy classes for inner-city teens. No one knows his name either. Not everyone was moved. One call came in, bitter. "You're a coward," the voice growled. "You found religion because you broke. You were soft. We're still fighting." It stung, but he understood. He once said those exact words about someone else. The hardest moment came from a woman he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. She was one of the tools he used, an actress hired to pose as a victim in a smear campaign. Her message was short: "You got forgiveness. What do I get?" They met. She cried. He listened. "I'm not God," he finally said, "but I know who is." Some nights he speaks at recovery groups, just his voice, no identity, no backstory. He ends every talk the same way: "If God could reach me, he can reach anyone." He doesn't need a pulpit. He's got a mop, a circle of folding chairs, a hand on someone's shoulder. That's enough. He says, "I used to manipulate millions. Now I help one man at a time. And honestly, that feels bigger." He doesn't ask for people to believe him. He's not collecting followers. He's not selling books. He doesn't even let most people know his real name, because it's not about him anymore. It's about the one man in the back row who thinks it's too late. It's about the single mom who feels like God stopped listening. It's about that 17-year-old sitting in his room, staring at the wall, wondering if life will ever make sense again. If even one of them hears his story and chooses to stay, then it was worth it all. Because once he had the ears of presidents, now he speaks to the broken and to him. That's the highest office he's ever held.
No matter where you've been, no matter how far you've fallen, grace is still reaching for you. If this story spoke to your heart, leave a comment below. Your words might be the encouragement someone else needs today. And if you carry your own story of pain, of searching, of redemption, we'd be honored to hear it. Share it in the comments or send it to us by email. Your journey could become the light in someone else's darkness. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell, not just to stay connected, but to help others find the hope you found. Because the more we share these stories, the more we remind the world, no one is ever too lost to be found.